convention to sit and read a script. Very few editors will take a script home to read it. There are so many professional writers who are trying to get into comics now that there are screenwriters and television writers and novelists, and believe it or not, they all want to write comics. So any new person has a lot of competition. The only thing I would suggest, and I know it probably isn't what you want to hear, but I'm trying to level with you, if you could sell a book or a play or something to somebody else and get it published or get it shown on a screen or on a stage, then you become a professional. And if you call the editor and say, look, I'm so-and-so, I had a novelist printed by Random House, I had a novel printed and it sold pretty well and I'd like to write comics, the chances are you'll get a listen from the editor. But if you're just a new guy, I don't even know what to tell you. Probably the best thing is just to try to meet an editor here at some of these conventions, and maybe in some way the way you talk to him will interest him or her, or I don't know, it's potluck. It's very difficult as a writer, much more difficult than as an artist.
All right, thank you.
See, when I was writing them years ago, nobody wanted to write comics. So anybody who'd come up and say, hey, I'd like to write some stories, the editor would grab them. I found another sucker. It's just different today. We had westerns, we had teenage comics, we had animated comics, we had horror comics, we had war stories, everything you could think of. And the superheroes were a very small part of in fact, I think when I did the Fantastic Four, we didn't have any superheroes. We mainly had monster books at that time. So one day he said to me, Stan, I think we ought to get into superheroes because the Superman company is doing pretty well. So I came up with the Fantastic Four. We didn't think it was going to be anything that sensational. It sold well. So he said, hey, give me another superhero. So, you know, I came up with whatever it was, the X-Men or the Hulk, I can't remember the order of them. But each time I did it, I was just dreaming something up to hold my job. Because before that, he would say, I want a Western book. So I came up with the Black Rider and the Outlaw Kid and God knows what. Or he'd say, I want a teenage book. So I came up with Millie the Model and Tessie the Typist and Nellie the Nurse. I was in a rut with those names. And so again, it didn't feel like anything special, except after a while the books caught on and people started talking about them and that's when I decided to change the name of the company. We were called, I think, Atlas at the time, and I figured we need a better name. All of a sudden, we really have fans, which I never felt we had before. So the very first book that Martin Goodman had ever published years ago was called Marvel Mystery Comics.